How do you know she's not fooling you? How do you know that?
Well, watch, listen, see what is consistent, see what isn't. Is there any benefit?
Do you know what's consistent? Letecia's behavior of lying, of telling stories, of conning. That's consistent. Letecia's lack of empathy, her game playing, that's consistent. Through even before the crime. Letecia's refusal to take responsibility is consistent. Letecia's willingness or demonstrated desire to raise herself up, to make herself look good, is consistent. Her grievance about, I'm the one that takes care of everybody, that's consistent. All of those things are consistent.
Yeah.
What happened to that piece of paper?
I will certainly find it for you.
Oh, wait a minute here. You just told the court
What?
that you don't have these documents, that you lost them. That's what you just...
There's trouble. This is probably it.
Your Honor,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have you step out in the hallway, back to the jury room, please.
let me just ask you a simple question. Do you have those documents that you used in the interview with Ms. Stauch, yes or no?
I gave them to you, yeah. They
Okay.
are there, but they haven't.
At this time, I'm going to ask that the court take judicial notice that Mr. Tellini and I went through those stacks of notes, and none of the notes that she's referring to are in the stack of notes that she has in the court.
If you're going to go to court, whether you're an expert or not, no matter who you are, if you're going to sit in a court of law and say something and say you have paper that backs it up, you need to have the paper.
What did you do with those notes that we just talked about, where you had Ms. Stauch sign something?
Whatever she signed there, or I had was turned over to Tellini to be copied and shared with you.
May I approach a witness?
Oh, yes, you may go ahead.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 7.
She's saying she turned them over after they just finished talking about it. She didn't. I mean, if you were to believe her, it makes the defense look really bad, like they're hiding something, and that makes no sense. And given her behavior, at this point, I'm siding with the defense attorneys here. This is crackers.
735. Have you taken a moment to look at that document?
This is not, this is a different patient with. But you have a question about it?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you some questions about it, sure.
Because
You recognize that People's Exhibit 735?
I recognize that it was a communication line to
An email between you and Mr. Tellini, correct?
the best of my knowledge.
And does that document accurately reflect that email that you had with regards to the EEG that we talked about yesterday, and whether or not you had knowledge that you were withdrawing your request to have an EEG done?
To my mind, it was not simply dropping, it was saying, this is not right.
Dr. Lewis, just answer my question.
I,
Does the document accurately depict the email exchange between you and Mr. Tellini with regards to your knowledge of whether an EEG was withdrawn? Yes or no?
whether it was, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the.
Withdrawn, your request for an EEG.
It was not a permanently withdrawn thing, it was saying right now.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask you to direct her to answer
Dr.
my
Lewis,
question.
the question is simple. Is this an email that you sent to Mr. Tellini? Yes or no?
Yes, it is sent to him.
Mr. Young?
We move to admit People's Exhibit 735.
No objection. Exhibit 735 will be admitted. Go ahead.
And did you say in that email, go ahead and withdraw the EEG? We'll address it at a later time.
I said, now, if we could address it later, this did not mean it's not important, it was just organizing in my head as opposed to what like that became less important than something else.
Well, the email speaks for itself, doesn't it? You're dictating in the email why you didn't think it was important at that time.
Well, I was saying that there are other things have arisen that we should also address.
So why did you yesterday blame the attorneys that you didn't know anything about the EEG being withdrawn?
I did not consider this withdrawing it permanently, but simply,
Oh my gosh! Okay, this explains why the lawyers weren't jumping up and down before. When this witness made it sound like they were unethical and that they lied, it was her. Holy wow.
I did not think of it as a withdrawal.
Listen to my question carefully.
Yes.
Why did you yesterday tell this jury that you never requested to withdraw the EEG, that the attorneys did it, never told you anything about it?
Because I did not request to withdraw it. I said you could kind of wait and do it, and I
She put the reputations of these men at risk. I mean, wow. I don't know what to say.
did not think that they had.
Can I retrieve your document from you, please? This is what you said in your email, and you can explain what it means after I read it, okay? I have been reading more on Letecia, and I think we should drop the EEG request. What does that mean to you?
Rest of it, know the timing of it, and know what I was thinking about at that time that was most important. But this was not something that I was going to, I can't possibly assist you if you don't have this. I think it's, I think we should have it, but I believe that, Mr. Delaney had said to me, there will be appeals on this.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that be
Your Honor.
Dr. Lewis.
It gets-
I'd like Dr. Lewis, please
Wait,
stop.
wait. One at a time. Dr. Lewis, please confine.
I can't believe she just did that. Look, even the defense is up. Like everybody's trying to stop her. Somebody asked in the comments, why did the defense let her go on so long? And I said, well, they can't very well drag her off the stand in the middle of cross as much as they want to. But look, the guy, he's standing right up like, oh, you never say there's going to be an appeal. And then that makes me think, wow, like, do they really think they're going to lose? And as for the email said, I'm reading more about Letecia and maybe we shouldn't have it. What was that about? Did that mean, oh, we have so much evidence, so much historical evidence, so many interviews with family, so much corroboration that we actually don't need it because we have so much evidence? But I think not. Or could it mean, yeah, I think it's probably not good for us? I mean, I can't say what it really means, but boy, this doesn't look good. And yet, so, it's okay to withdraw the MRI, but this is in light. Remember the Mocha test, the clock? Letecia's scores were puzzling and showed brain damage in one and then not the other. I mean, wouldn't that be even more reason to be really pushing for that MRI? This is wild. Holy crap, man.
And Mr. Young?
Your Honor, I would ask that what she just said be stricken, that the jury be instructed to disregard it.
Mr. Tellini? All right. Ladies and gentlemen.
So the defense agrees to have their own experts' comments stricken from the record. This is, wow.
Of the jury, you're instructed to disregard Dr. Lewis's response to Mr. Young's most recent question. Mr. Young?
Your son was missing. To protect him, that's what I do. She was upset. Everyone was upset. Little baby girl was upset. Everyone was crying. That's what I do.
All right. She's saying she's the protector. She shot Gannon. And that's what she does. And the reason is that Letecia was upset and everybody else was upset. And so she's the protector, right? So that's her rationale for shooting the caped person on the bed who turned out to be Gannon. But here's the thing. She said everybody was upset because Letecia's son was missing. Well, Letecia's son, stepson, I don't want to give her that to call Gannon her son. Landon and Al's son was missing because he was dead. So the crime had already happened. So this cannot possibly be the case that this alter came out and did this. I'm not going to play the entire interview. Letecia Stauch and her games get too much attention. On the other hand, before passing judgment or final judgment, everything has to be looked at. So I reviewed the whole thing, and there are a couple of things that I noticed. And one is that all of these alleged personalities that are supposedly different, they have one thing in common. They're all very concerned about how people perceive Letecia. That's interesting. And across all of them, instead of statements that express remorse or sorrow for Gannon, all the statements are about her. It's always about some way for her to evade responsibility. Yet again, now isn't that interesting how that is consistent through the entire personality? It's consistent in her entire history that we're aware of.
What did you talk about after the camera was turned off, Doctor?
I beg your pardon?
What did you talk about with Maria after the camera turned off?
I have no recollection of talking with her after the camera was turned off. No idea.
Like she has no recollection and doesn't understand why the defense would withdraw the request for an MRI. Right.
I don't know for sure on the papers, but I can tell you sometimes if things seem that there's down or that patient would be improved, sometimes I will write back and forth.
Is she setting up to do a documentary on Letecia? I believe she just said sometimes it can be approved, for the patient to write back and forth. Is she hoping that Letecia will write to her from jail and that they can correspond? Because wouldn't that be great material for a book or another documentary? That's just, I don't know if I heard it right. I'm just wondering out loud. I have no proof of any of that.
You didn't preserve those documents. We've already gone through. You did not preserve those documents that you see her writing on, did you?
I do not know. I'd have to look, but I don't have a recollection of having preserved them.
If you're doing an evaluation and the person in question, your subject, produces a document, whether it's at your request or not, and the purpose of that production is to assist it in the assessment, you have to, if you're unbiased, accept evidence that will disprove your claim or what you believe as much as you accept evidence that proves what you believe. And even neutral evidence or evidence that maybe you don't understand how to interpret at the time. You preserve that. So this is so weird that she wouldn't, and that she wouldn't turn that over.
Robert De Niro did a pretty good job at that in the movie Cape Fear as well, didn't he?
No,
He didn't. Okay.
no, Robert De Niro.
Actors do a good job of acting, don't they?
No, Robert De Niro was not an outstanding, in fact, he was not dictating of multiple necessarily in his year. No,
I'm pretty sure Robert De Niro is not watching this trial. This is funny. I like Robert De Niro. I think he's an excellent actor. Oh my gosh.
he did not see anything. Update Rodriguez, Letecia, say Ghana, Maria, say Lena, Sana, and Cole.
I guess this is the Latin confession that turned out to not be anything, and it was just gibberish, and it's conveniently lost now. So the reason I didn't play all that is because it was more of the same that we've heard before. And I have nothing new to say. I'm just more irritated. And it was more acting, more hurting, more attempts to hurt the victims in the case. So I don't think it serves any good purpose to rebroadcast all that.
That reason.
Why didn't you ask her about why she gave Gannon an excessive amount of hydrocodone?
I didn't know that she gave that.
Do you think that's important?
Only if I know for sure she gave somebody that.
You read the autopsy report, you know it's there.
I know that he had this. I don't know who gave it to him. I've many cases where children have.
The question of how he got the hydrocodone in his system, I think, is a pretty important question.
And if I was going to do something unethical, as they seem to be implying, wouldn't it make, I would have just been able to do that confidentially instead of on an open video.
I'm gonna object to that form of question.
Sustained.
If I was trying to feed her a story, it wouldn't make any sense for me to do it in that setting where it's recorded, would it?
I don't know that the prosecution actually alleged that or implied that. I took it as they're pointing out that, hey, you know, this is a mistake and this could have caused this for Letecia to be able to better come up with a story. It's interesting that he's saying this in front of the jury. Because if they had not already, if they didn't put that together or didn't think that, he just put that in their head.
Do you learn, have you learned lots of things over your experience in interviewing and evaluating people with DID? Over the, what is it, 40? Yes, over 40 plus 50 years. Have you learned at picking up on subtle cues?
All right. They're going to go through this subtle cues and all that. But remember that DID was alleged and the plea changed before these interviews. So this diagnosis was made almost like in advance when it comes to the doctor. So like even this whole sequence of how and when she was diagnosed doesn't hang together. And also we've repeatedly heard about how you need this unmistakable evidence that predates the crime, that predates contact with the doctor. We have seen none of that. And you've seen all the iterations of these supposed personalities. Have you ever once when Letecia was threatened ever once seen these personalities come out? Because they should have been coming out all over the place in all these police interviews. And they didn't. You could argue about the one with the monster can. But even then, there was no different voice. There was no killer personality. I just, God, I hope the jury isn't confused by, there's so much crap and this business of jumping time frames. Letecia does that in her stories. Jumping around from time frame to time frame, so you have trouble following what the heck is going on. This is happening here. I expected to hear, this is when I saw the defendant as a doctor. This is when I interviewed her. And I did all this research. This is when I interviewed other people. And after that, I diagnosed her. And then we changed her plea. But it happened in reverse. And, she did say to the prosecutor, well, maybe it makes sense to you because she has a different form of logic than the rest of us. This doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, it's instead of getting the evidence and then forming an opinion based on the evidence, we've heard an opinion and then trying to get the evidence and then it kind of skirting around it when the evidence isn't there.